Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Joined, as always, for our Cloud News of the Month recap, Aaron Delp, Brandon Whichard, joining as sort of, kind of permanent co-host on the monthly thing. Boys, how you been? How was your New Year's? How was your January?
Been fine. Football season's over, so it's a little bit depressing. We only have one more game left and no games this weekend, but we're getting through it. And luckily, there's lots of exciting tech news to distract us from the lack of football.
Yeah, Aaron, you're in a new location. How's life down at the beach?
It's not bad. It's not bad. Yeah, I'm in the process of going through my mom's old place, and so I have the I guess you could call it luxury of having a place at the beach, but now I got to clean the place out. It's got wall to wall stuff and stuff in the closets, and it'll be an interesting couple months.
Yeah, be careful what you ask for. So yeah, Brandon mentioned football. We can't do a Cloud News of the Month without having some sort of commentary on football. I'm going to throw this out there because we talked a lot about college football. There's always a college football minute here on this show. I thought the college football playoff stunk. I thought too many of the games were blowouts. Yes. What did you guys think of the overall college football, the first 12-team college football playoff?
Well, I just have to go the other way. I mean, just to be controversial, more football is better. Football, it's like pizza. More pizza is always better. I love football. I love college football. I love watching it. I understand the first round games weren't as fun. I was tied into a lot of them personally, so I felt the losses personally. I felt the blowouts in a way that I won't go into detail in the show. And then I actually thought the second and third round games and the championship games were pretty fun. Certainly living here in Texas, there was a lot of sad Texas fans on what became an epic play. So I'll go the other way. Love college football. Give me more. Expand it to 14. Bring it on.
I feel like there is lessons to be learned. With all of this, it was a good first attempt, but I'm a little bit. I think it's great, and I like where they're going longer term, but I think it could have been done a lot better.
Yeah,
especially
all right.
First round sucked.
We're on both sides of the spectrum and one in the middle, so we're quite the show in terms of
that's right.
In terms of hot takes. Well, they say there's an old saying that March comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. January kind of did the opposite. It came in like a lamb and seems to be going out like a lion. Guys, where do you want to start? Do we start on the AI side where all the news was, or do we sort of hold that towards the end?
I think we have to start with DeepSeek, right? I mean, okay. I feel like we had a month of news in like all of a week. So, I mean, that seemed to be the biggest thing. DeepSeek came on the scene, right? Released its new model and seemed to shake up everyone from the tech world to the stock market.
Yeah, for anybody, like, none of us live in Silicon Valley, but I feel like every single person who is even closely related, or near Silicon Valley, from VCs to people in tech to grandmothers to stock market, just utterly freaked out when DeepSeek came out. What part of it was most interesting to you? I think for me it was just the possibility that sort of this economic model that we've been talking about for, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years around generative AI, where everything was just, you can't throw enough money and enough resources at that, seems to sort of flip on its head. But what other parts were interesting to you?
Well, I thought the part I thought was good was, I guess, two parts. One, it is sort of like many of us have talked about it, like, what if it got a lot cheaper? What would happen, right? And so that's sort of like somewhat predictable and somewhat interesting. But then I almost like the meta commentary has been more fun for me to watch. It's sort of like, the rules I've been kind of thinking about is like, one, no one knows anything. And by that, I just mean the implications of this are really unknown. Exactly what does it mean, and how is it's going to play out over time. And a lot of people think they know. And then two, it's been fun to, if you will, see the confirmation bias throughout the industry. It's like wherever you were doing before, then you say DeepSeek and you see it makes what we're doing before even better. Like if you were building the models and paying people to build the foundation models, you're like, see how important they are? We need foundation models like this because this is the only way to do it. And if you didn't build the foundation model and you didn't invest, you'd say, see, it made sense for us to wait. We didn't waste all of that money. And now we're poised to, if you will, take the market by storm. And of course, like, no one really knows. Like, I don't know exactly how it will play out. There's going to be a lot of that over the next probably month. And I'm sure in February we'll talk about it, and probably in March we'll talk about it. So I think that's fun. And then I just kind of believe, just for like the users. I'm just talking about like if you don't invest in these models and you're not working in a company building on these models, I think generally it was a good week for most of us, because it just means if AI is going to produce greater apps or it's going to help your life a lot, your life in any way, it's got a lot cheaper, right? That's for sure. You're going to see more of that quicker. So I kind of feel like, well, if I'm not a venture capitalist. I didn't like give anyone $1 billion. I don't have to like sleep at night worried about that. So like, to me, it's just like, we're going to get more stuff and now we've got more models to play with. So I think I'm very optimistic. And I love the Palace intrigue. And of course, it's going to play out over the next, weeks, months, years to see what happens. What's your take, Aaron?
No, I think so. Here's the thing. The press love to play it as US versus China. But I think and of course, mainstream press, they fundamentally missed what is really going on here. What's really going on is I kind of consider this almost like phase 2 in the next architectures. Because, all of the big models was transformer architecture, and then you had like Mamba architecture coming along and ways to optimize them. There's a bunch of open source papers and, hey, if we do this and we do this and we do this. Well, what did DeepSeek ultimately do? They took a bunch of really smart computer science PhDs and they took a bunch of the open source papers that were out there and played around with the models and mixed and mashed together all the optimization techniques and came up with a better model. I mean, and so at the end of the day, like they basically did what a lot of folks in open source do, like took a lot of things that are out there and, swizzled it in a different way. And now we have a new way to do it going forward that, hey, might be more cost effective. So for me, it's almost like phase 2, right? Because there's going to be probably a whole set of American startups now that are going to take this architecture and go build their models off this architecture.
Right. Yeah, I think Brandon was right. Like we figured out, people have figured out ways that everybody was a winner in this. Everybody figured out a way to spin this so that they were a winner. I think there's a lot of sort of interesting nuances that are starting to come out of this. Like, it seems like as best people can kind of piece together, they seem to have done a lot of their work kind of piggybacking on top of or standing on sort of the Llama model, which was open source, but not completely open source. Like it seems to me that they built on the Llama model and then changed the license that they used in terms of distributing, which you're really kind of not supposed to do. And so I think the other kind of interesting part about this is the number of people who are kind of pointing fingers now at like, well, you did it right, but you kind of broke the rules, but you built on this model, but you didn't really attribute it the right way. And OpenAI is like, well, you stole our data. Thank you to the Wiz for finding that out. We now actually know what the Wiz does. They're out finding stuff. They're sleuths. And so, the guys who were like, oh no, it's perfectly fine to steal everybody else's data because it's not really copyrighted, are now like, hey, you stole my data. I think we're in the complete Wild West, right? There are no rules for real. There is no enforcement of any rules. All the people who were like, I'm on the side of like small tech from a VC perspective is like, oh yeah, we didn't want any of that protectionism for what we were doing. But now they're like, well, maybe we should make sure that the American model win. Black is white, left is right, up is down, dogs and cats sleeping together. It is definitely 2025 is going to be the year that there are no rules, and we're going to kind of realize that there aren't any rules. So, I felt like that was a really good contrast because it kind of came from out of nowhere. Although people, love to claim that like, oh, I was covering DeepSeek for months and months and I knew what they were doing. Kind of comparing it to the thing a week before with the Stargate announcement, which was very much if we pile up money to the moon, then we have the possibility of doing this. And people were, jumping on board with that. Oh my gosh, look at what America's doing. We're marshaling all of our resources. Forget the fact that all the money was supposedly coming from, Japanese VCs and Middle East VCs and all that sort of stuff. I felt like I don't remember seeing a contrast in two news stories in such sort of short time frame in a long time. Like I can't remember, anything that was like that in a long time. So yeah, it's the AI space is going to get very, very interesting. But like Brandon said, I think everybody is going to sort of claim to be a winner out of this, which makes this just as much fun.
Yeah, and to your point, like those two stories, I think the fact they were kind of paired up again unintentionally, it's like they just couldn't be more different, right? Because Stargate is sort of announcing they're going to raise $500 billion, led by SoftBank, which probably means like sovereign wealth funds, which is like it's an impossibly hard number to like just conceptualize. You're like, why not just say $1 trillion? Like, it's just like so much money. It's insane. But like, then there's lots of speculation of like, well, they don't really have any of this money. They're really just announcing like a way to invest, right? It's sort of like, we're open for business, give us your money. So there's just kind of all this huge number, smoke and mirrors, nothing tangible. And then later in the week, it's like, turns out we replicated everything. Go to deepseek.com, try it out. Like, it's just immediately, you can use it today. And it's just like, that contrast is like jolting, right? And it's like, and I think that's why it's hard. That's kind of why I say like, no one really knows what's going on. On one side, they're like, we need 500 billion or we won't even compete. On the other side, it's like, we've already done it. You can use it right now. And then somewhere in between lies probably what's going to really happen. So it was like, I think you can't pick two stories more opposed in 1 week around AI.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I think it highlighted in, I'm not real excited about this. Like, you couldn't read a story between the two of those things that was like, okay, half the story is going to be sort of the technology, sort of the speculation about it. And the other half are, what are the political ramifications? Whether it was Elon or US versus China, or, was this done, with Trump's endorsement or without Trump? And that part I'm not really looking forward to, because I do feel like the scope of what's going on here, whether data is safe or not safe, like, this is going to be a very politically charged stuff, which unfortunately makes it very hard to start to figure out like, well, what's actually true versus what's, being spun in one way, shape, or another. So that piece I'm not necessarily looking forward to. A couple of other things that sort of got buried within, sort of buried within there on the AI side. ChatGPT launched ChatGPT-Gov for government agencies. So similar to like GovCloud that AWS launched, or Azure's launched, and so on and so forth, which really were very much like, well, we've kind of built you your own private cloud, if you will. And there's lots of certifications that are needed, FedRAMP and different stuff. This one seems like, how in the world are you going to do that? Since this is all about data, like, are they implying the idea that they're going to take a certain level of like unclassified data, classified data? Like, I don't totally, I mean, I get the concept. They're like, hey, we want to allow, somebody in the commerce department or something to be able to use ChatGPT, but like, have you seen anything more than this, other than just being like, what are you doing? Like, where are you getting this data from?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think you asked all the right questions. My immediate thought was AWS when they built like the whole government cloud. But you're right. I mean, it's one of these things where it's like, without being involved in the implementation, because I got to think it's not like, the government, like anyone, because it's usually, there's usually the government stuff and then there's the DoD stuff, right? That's usually even separate. So I don't know. I can't imagine, they just sort of like rolled it out. Although, I say this, who knows, right? Maybe anything is possible now, but like, I'd be surprised if they just rolled it out, was like, all right, everyone in the government, any department, just go at it. I think it's probably more, there's probably some guardrails around, like, if you're going to do it, here's how you need to do it. And then I assume on the back end, they've got some super, special security / at least defense of people getting that information to, like what you were saying before, so that someone can't just like, go figure out all the prompts like they did for DeepSeek in like a matter of a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to add too is and again, I don't know, like you, I've been asking a lot of questions about it, but one of the questions I have been asking is, like, does this mean, one of the reasons that they stood up this entire instance is because, like, then there's no, like, they won't save the prompts, or they won't be trained in the future, or there won't be any harvesting of data. And so I would imagine it's a little bit too of like, hey, we need to do business with this community. This community has a certain amount of expectations and security things above and beyond everyone else, and we're willing to go there. But I don't know what the details are, but I'm assuming there's a lot of things around that.
Well, I can only imagine the questions, given that OpenAI doesn't own their own data centers. So, even at the most basic isolation perspective, like, is this really just an extension of an Azure data center? Do they have to, whenever they announce stuff, do they essentially have to co-announce it with Azure? Because now you've got this Stargate thing, which again is down in Texas, isn't in the government. And you got to imagine if this stuff, kind of goes any further, that you're going to have something like what happened with the last Gov Cloud type of thing where they were like, okay, we want to open this up to competition from Oracle and the others, to the point where they essentially are, the government, they are essentially saying like, no, the models are commodity, right? Because I want to be able to switch between them. I want to be able to, do my government thing where I've got 2 or 3 vendors that all sort of look, I want you to all look the same. It is going to make it for sort of a hard thing to quantify for them, given government contracts and so on and so forth.
Well, and I will add this because I do have, not related to this, but I worked with a SaaS application at previous company, and we worked on FedRAMP stuff, and the level of operations reporting and certifications you have to do is, it's pretty mind-boggling, down to, where are the data centers, who has access to the data, are they U.S. citizens, background checks, security clearances, like to even get near the gear that even hosts everything, right? So it's a whole other level of both introspection as well as, certification to just own and operate this stuff. It is not simple by any means.
No. Let's shift gears. I think we've covered the 2 or 3 sort of big AI things. I'm sure there was a million other things. I know that Alibaba just the other day came out with another model that apparently said they were faster than the. We'll skip that. We'll save that for February till it shakes itself out. Let's talk a little bit about cloud stuff. Not a ton of cloud news, but a few things that sort of definitely fit on our bingo card for sure. The first one that just sort of feels like it's a real thing or the beginning of something that people ought to start tracking. Microsoft announced their earnings, continue to do well, as Cote would say. They're making lots of money. I don't know why anybody's complaining, but their cloud group failed, kind of fell short of their projected earnings numbers. And the reason that was sort of given has been spun, listening to a few different things is, in essence, 2 things. One, their margins aren't nearly as high, which makes sense given the amount of AI stuff they're doing. And we know that AI stuff just costs more. The GPUs cost more than CPUs, all that kind of stuff. But it feels like Microsoft kind of over-indexed themselves on trying to sell AI to like small and medium businesses as opposed to enterprises, kind of pushing down into their channel partners. And the small, medium folks were sort of like, it's not really for me. And that distracted them from buying they were doing on other cloud stuff. So I think the net of it, the TLDR on this is, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how much the attention that AI is getting in IT organizations and businesses versus their day-to-day cloud stuff kind of rolls itself up into, which side of the house in these clouds are making their money, making their profits and so forth. It's going to be interesting to watch it in Google and in AWS as they announce their numbers coming up.
So here's my big question about this stuff. One number jumped out at me from the link there, and it was, I don't remember the exact number, but it's in the billions. I want to say it's like 15 billion or something, was the Microsoft AI revenue.
I saw that.
And I was like, well, the last thing I heard, it was like 200 million, Copilot revenue.
Right. And
it was like, how do we go from 200 million to 15 billion? And are we playing the, hey, let's take, the Office 365 revenue and put it in with the cloud revenue and come up with this weird mixed number? Like, my biggest thing was like, yeah, okay, great. They fell short. But did they fall short because they took a bunch of money out of the one bucket and put it in the wrong bucket and the report didn't come out right? Like, I'm just struggling with where are you getting 15 billion in revenue for AI? That's my simple and only question to them.
Yeah, to that end, I just looked it up here. Technically, it's 13 billion. So there you
13
go.
Billion. There you
but
go.
Nonetheless, I
Yes.
agree with you. It seemed to be, it does feel like, and we've talked about this many times on many podcasts, like Microsoft's cloud earnings are just messy, right? They sort of include lots of things and, I think they can move stuff around. But, I always think it comes back to, we always look at these in groups of 3. So surprised, like I was surprised they were down, right? Because I always think like, regardless of all the AI hype, it's still like, we talked about this all the time. It's really, server, compute, storage, networking, right? That's what drives these high level numbers, these big numbers. And so I'm interested, of course, as always, but now with this data point going into the Amazon earnings and the Google Cloud earnings, that will be interesting. Like if they're all slightly down or slightly missed their earnings, that will be a trend. We'll be like, because all of these various executives say it's early innings. It's always early innings, right? Well, at some point, if you're not growing, it's got to at least be in the middle of the game, or some other metaphor has to take over. But we have seen this before, right? We've seen AWS kind of slid back for a while, but it's unique to them, and they've sort of roared back. And so maybe Microsoft's doing the same thing. So if it's mixed, if Google and AWS, I'll probably just be like, well, whatever. It was just, the Azure sales team had a bad quarter. They'll be back. So, it's like, is it a trend, or is this data point? I guess we have one data point. I'm not willing to call it a trend yet, but I think we should watch closely.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And to Aaron's point, I think we put a link to maybe like one of the Yahoo articles. Apologies to Jordan Yvette. I didn't link to his CNBC articles we usually do. But yeah, they have a breakdown of, kind of the weird way that Microsoft, defines Azure, because it's still like intelligent cloud plus some productivity stuff and some other things. And it does feel like they did a lot of counting of, hey, we put AI in Office 365. Hey, we put AI in GitHub Copilot. We put AI in this stuff. And it feels like they're counting like an AI checkbox in a big bundle that they sell. And, again, they have to account for certain things, certain ways, because they're obviously spending a ton of money on GPUs and so forth. But it does feel like they're playing a lot of games, especially, if you just use as a proxy, if you go, okay, well, for every dollar that Microsoft makes on AI, they're probably some percentage of that's going to OpenAI, and OpenAI said what they did like $5 billion last year. So, congratulations for Microsoft if they're able to mark up OpenAI 3x, but I don't think that's necessarily what happened there. So yeah, be worth digging into. I've got a couple of news stories that I think we just want to have as regular segments now for the cloud news of the week. The first one is a company called Yellowbrick, who is apparently a SQL cloud provider. They repatriated back to public cloud or to private cloud, saved $4 billion.
Or $1 million.
$4 million. Yeah, not $4 billion. $4 million.
You got to go from AI terminology.
That's right. It is hard to switch mentally. It's just an M. We're only talking about M's.
It's just an M.
Just millions. Why are you bring that up? It's only 4 million.
I'm going to bring that up in work meetings. Oh, we're only talking about M's today. Okay, cool. Let me know when we're talking about B's. Yeah. So they are the winner of the month of repatriation. We're gonna try and track at least one repatriation a month. They save $4 million. So cool. So, we have another data point, Brandon, for the trend that we're not sure is actually happening, but we have DHH's company, and we now have Yellowbrick. So
congratulations, Yellowbrick. It looks like they were spending $6 million. Now they're spending $4 million. So who knows? Come on the Cloudcast. Tell your story. That's what you should tell them. We want to know more. Tell us what you did.
Yeah. And another story that we didn't think we'd necessarily be talking about in 2025, Broadcom is apparently, people are writing about Broadcom is pushing customers not to do 1-year deals, not to sort of, dip their toe in the water and see if they can do a transition. They're pushing very hard for 3-year deals. So sounds like we're going to have to be talking about VMware again in 2025. It doesn't sound like we'll be actually talking about the technology of VMware, but we'll just simply be talking about, kind of the give and take between, do we want to keep paying these things? But it sounds like Broadcom kind of wants to get ahead of those stories and is only pushing people to be able to sign 3-year deals, which again, I guess there's articles to be written. I'm not sure if there's any commentary for us to make about that around Broadcom.
I just think this is the full Broadcom. I think we probably talked about this is what was going to happen, and this is what is happening, right? They're just like, yep, we're here. Yeah, we know you don't like it, but we'll take this money for 3 years. Yep.
Agreed.
We hear that you are very upset by that. Now, when would you send us a check? I tell you what, let's go out to dinner one more time. You get it all out of your system, and now you're going to pay us. And generally, it's working, right? I mean, it's like, it is a boring story because it's like, it works. It's just kind of like in the trenches, and like, it's, you have to say it's a good business strategy, right? They're doing what they set out to do. So it is what it is.
They're not backing down. Absolutely.
And the trend I was going to say too is like, I think when you sign a 3-year deal, because here's the thing, like you can sign a 1-year deal because it might take you 1 year to migrate off anyway. And so you can kick that can down the road and like, maybe you want to migrate off. If you sign a 3-year deal, you're not migrating off. And so I also think it just, all those ones that like were on that cusp of like, hey, maybe I'll just do a 1-year deal and we'll migrate off and then we're done. And they're just like, nope, No 1-year deals, man. It's 3 years. We're locking you in.
It's ELA, baby. Once you get into, I mean, it's 3 to 5 years. Those are what all those sales reps want. 3 to 5 years ELAs. You get them locked in, and then you just keep it going for as long as you can. So
yeah.
Makes sense.
We might need a reality show between the NVIDIA product managers who don't really have anything to do and the VMware product managers who definitely don't have any new features they have to commit to, because this is all gravy train at this point, right? There's no way they're putting any more capabilities into those products.
I think so. But I think the NVIDIA people are I don't know if they're happier. They're a lot more richer, is my guess, right? They're sort of like, we're just like, we have a lot. Well, we're really, really rich. The Broadcom people are probably like, we have good jobs. I think, there's probably a different way that they would answer those questions.
Well, yeah. And the NVIDIA folks, they had one day when they were all calling their broker being like, oh my God, the stock went down. Should I get out? Is everything going? And like, for those who didn't actually get through because their broker was busy or whatever, the next day the thing sort of stabilized and got back to normal. And they were like, oh, okay, forgot. I'm still super rich.
Thank
God I didn't sell all my stuff. I'm back, baby. Last thing I want to talk about, because again, this was kind of a quiet month, even though there was some news. This is going to be another segment that we're going to do. And we really only have one rule on Cloudcast. And I think you guys are on SDT sort of have a similar rule. I mean, we have all sorts of sayings, follow the money and don't try and change your company culture. Don't take that job. But our one rule is we absolutely believe wholeheartedly that everybody should have the opportunity to be very, very mediocre at their job, but make a ton of money, but only one time. And after that one time that you make a ton of money, we do not want to hear about you anymore. If you decide you want to be dumb enough to not be on a beach and get back into tech, we don't want to hear about you. We're not going to talk about you. There is somebody who did that. We're going to call out Mr. Pat Gelsinger, and we're not talking about you anymore. I'm putting a stake in the ground. He is our January winner of the We're Not Talking About You Anymore. You had a chance to make all your money, and for some reason you think, even though you were incredibly mediocre at Intel, brought down their stock price by 50%, we are no longer listening to anything you have to say about the industry. and if you have failed that, if you have not taken the money and gone to the beach, we're going to highlight you one time and we're never talking about you again. So I'm hoping this is going to be a recurring theme. I think that will be. But Mr. Gelsinger decided he needed to say something, and we don't care. We really don't care. I love
it. You have to come up with a name for this. Like, it's like a banishment list, like a reverse Hall of Fame. You made it in. You're out, baby. We're not going to talk about you ever again.
Yeah, we only have one rule. When you make that huge amount of money, and by the way, you made it doing something that was really mediocre, right? You fired you fired 15,000 people. Like, you're done. You don't get to talk anymore.
We won't go into the story or anything, but it was funny just to see it kind of come across the wire, because it's like almost being at a party or something, and we're just like someone out of left field. It's like, I didn't even know you were here. What are you doing here? Like, what are you doing talking about this? This isn't like, I thought you left 2 hours ago. So it was kind of funny to see it show up. So,
and not just that, but I mean, shows up with a new company. It's like the equivalent of showing up with like the new girlfriend in the corner kind of thing of like, wait a second, what, you're here and you're what are you doing? Like,
that's right. So if you care what the article was, or if you care what the news was, the article, there is a link in the show notes, but he is going into our Hall of Fame of he achieved something. Congratulations. We're not talking about you anymore. I don't care what the topic is. But he's out. So if you have an idea what to call it, email us. But I think I like the reverse Hall of Fame. I like the reverse Hall of Fame. That's the leading one so far. There we go. We've got two things you can reach out to us about: November news and the reverse Hall of Fame. Now, another thing to talk about. Well, guys, I think that's everything. We could talk about TikTok being banned, but that came and went. Didn't seem to bother anybody. People are back on TikTok. My kids are wasting their time on that. I assume everybody else's kids are wasting their time on that.
I will say this real quick about the TikTok. My oldest, she did. It was funny. I was like, "Oh, TikTok's back," and she's like, "I don't know if that's a good thing." She's like, "I just realized in that however many hours it was down, how much I was."
She changed her life in 8 hours.
Yeah, she was just like
in the 10 hours I was without. I was like, I rethought whether or not I was doing the right thing. I love it.
It made her come to a conclusion. It was like when COVID and we all stopped traveling. It was like, holy crap, what just happened to my life? Like that was her moment.
The joints on their fingers got better. Their posture got better. They weren't looking at their phone as much. Good things happened. Yeah, the only thing that's interesting to me about the TikTok stuff is just how much Oracle Cloud now is trying to sort of be like, I'm going to wedge my way into every one of these, like they want to buy TikTok, they want to host TikTok, they want to be part of Stargate. like that feels like the only time we talk about Oracle Cloud, which might be perfectly fine. If that's their strategy. It's just, it seems a little unusual. But
I think it's a nothing to lose strategy, right? They're not,
exactly.
They're just not, trying to find a way in that top 3. And it's like, you're not going to get there by just selling more compute and storage and networking. People got that. So you got to do something. So I think,
well,
we'll see if it works.
Number 1 in headlines, number 1 in press releases. That's a start. Well, good. Well, guys, listen, January, like I said, wasn't the busiest month. It ended very hot, which I think lends to February, even though it's a short month, might give us a lot of things going on. It'll give us the Super Bowl. We'll figure out if Taylor Swift wins her 3rd straight Super Bowl and other important news like that. But guys, thank you for listening. Brandon, again, thanks for continuing to co-host and put up with our nonsense. And folks, if you have any questions, show@thecloudcast.net. You can always hit us up with things. And with that, I think we'll wrap it up and we'll talk to you next month.